Well, the U.S. strike on Iran is also the main topic at the European Union's Foreign Affairs Council today. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas said the issue had been discussed at breakfast and would be addressed in more detail later. She also warned Iran about retaliation.
Ministers are very much focused on the diplomatic solution and also the concerns of retaliation and this war escalating are huge. Especially closing of the Strait of Hormuz by Iran is something that it would be extremely dangerous and not good for anybody.
Well, let's cross straight over to Brussels, and we've got our Rosie Birchard standing by there. Rosie, what's the European Union most concerned about regarding the latest developments in the Middle East?
Well, yeah, look, European leaders have become used to, over the past few months of the Donald Trump presidency, waking up to shock announcements from Washington. But this was really something different. And there's a real sense here that Europe could be living with the consequences of this decision for decades to come. It's really something which is raising alarm here. We've seen Europeans calling for de-escalation. But the question, of course, really is who's listening to them.
Now, Germany's foreign minister has stressed the need for Iran and the U.S. to talk directly with one another. But at the same time, he also suggested that European countries could help, could play a role. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Iran is now called upon to be ready for direct talks with the United States of America. We in the E3 format will contribute what we can. I believe it is still necessary for us to be ready to negotiate. We have contacts with all sides and are using those very intensely. That has been the case over the weekend, and it will continue over the course of this week to be of crucial importance.
We heard a reference there, Rosie, to the E3 format. First of all, remind us what that is and what's happening within that grouping.
So the E3, France, Germany and the United Kingdom, and they played a crucial role in negotiating the Iran nuclear deal the last time round, which was a decade ago. And now, just a few days ago, we heard Donald Trump dismissing Europeans as irrelevant on this. But the fact they were there at the table a decade ago shows that this wasn't really irrelevant. Now we've heard, for example, from France as well as Germany saying they think there is a role to play and that they can draw on that past deal-making capacity to try and bring these parties back to the table. But the fact is we know that so far their calls for de-escalation, nobody has paid heed to them so far. So we're really looking to see whether there's any proof of that deal-making capacity that Europe claims to have, whether they'll actually be able to bring that to the table and try and bring some sort of an end to this conflict, of course, in which so many civilians are caught up.
Now, the EU's foreign policy chief has warned Iran about closing the Hormuz Strait. Many countries are worried about that, what the impact might be. What's at stake for Europe, Rosie, in relation to that particular choke point?
Yeah, a lot is at stake. That's a really crucial waterway, especially for the export of oil and gas to the rest of the world. Remember, the EU's been on a mission to decrease its dependency on Russian energy imports, and therefore it's really looked to the Gulf. So if that strait if there were to be blockages there, then we would have serious impacts on European energy security. A secondary impact could be that oil prices spike, and that could really stand to benefit Russia. And that's something the Europeans are very concerned about, given the war that Russia continues to wage with Ukraine. Then there might be all sorts of questions about would there be a military response, which would very likely divide Europeans. So that is something they're watching very carefully. It's not just Europe that would be impacted, of course, principally the region, but also China, which imports a lot of Iranian oil.
Briefly, Rosie, Moscow often cooperates with Tehran, not least in the defense sector. How does Europe see Russia's role in this situation?
Well, there's been a lot of nuances between European countries on how to respond to this overall, but where there has not been nuances is the question of Russia. They say that when it comes to the idea of Vladimir Putin perhaps playing a mediator role there, they say that that is a non-starter, that Russia has no credibility given what it's doing in Ukraine. And then on the question of we're hearing kind of words of support from Russia toward Iran. We know they're traditional allies, but I think from a European view, they're not really seeing much there in terms of action. So they will certainly be watching that very carefully to see how that relationship develops.
Rosie, thank you so much. Our correspondent Rosie Birchard in Brussels.